What's up guys, today I'm going to be showing you how I made this render in Blender. As you can see, it's another looping tunnel animation, so you may recognise some of the techniques shown in this video if you have been following my work. But what I'm really excited to show you is how I actually achieved this refracting light beam effect, which you can see throughout the animation. It's actually relatively simple to pull off, which you'll see as I walk you through the steps. And if you do make it to the end, feel free to tag me in your render if you post it to Instagram. I'd love to see what interesting ideas you come up with using this technique. My handle is @nevmotion and I'll be leaving it down below. Anyway, let's get on with it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is just delete everything in the scene. So hit A and then X. Let's go and delete everything. Now hit Shift A, add a mesh, and we'll add a cylinder. Now just come to this little box here and you want to expand this menu and drop the vertices to 3. That's going to give us this nice little triangle shape. Now click on your object, jump into edit mode, and we're going to go to face select here. So this little thing here. Just click on the first face, hit X, delete faces, and now click on the bottom face, hit X, delete faces. This is going to give us a nice tube for our camera to go through. So we're going to come back out of edit mode, so hit tab again. Now select your object and hit RX90. That's going to rotate it along the y-axis. Now let's extend this tunnel. So hit S, Y, and then 8. And that's going to stretch out this tunnel all the way along the y-axis. Great, now let's just apply these transform settings. So we're going to select our object and we're going to hit Control A, and I want you to hit all transforms. And what that does is it resets all these transform settings to their default values while retaining the same mesh data. Now let's add a camera to put inside our tunnel. So we're going to hit Shift A, we'll add a camera, and we'll hit Alt G to reset the location and then Alt R to reset the rotation. Now hit RX90 again on your camera, and that's going to face the camera along the tunnel. Now I want the camera to start where the tunnel starts, so I'm going to hit GY-8, and that's going to put the camera right there. You'll see the orange dot, that's the origin point of the camera, and as you can see it falls perfectly on the start of the tunnel. Now I notice my camera is slightly clipping out of the tunnel, so I'm just going to click back on my cylinder. I'm actually going to rename this first. I'm going to call that tunnel. And I'm going to just change the scale settings. So I'm going to pump it up to 1.6 on the X, and on the Z I'm going to do the same. So I'm just going to copy that value, Control C, paste that into the Z axis, and there we go. And now just apply that again. So Control A, apply all transforms, and it should reset again. Now in order to make this perfect loop, I want to animate the camera so that it basically goes along the tunnel like so, comes to the end, and then back again to the start. So in order to do this, it needs to be mathematically correct for it to loop perfectly. So we've got the camera starting at -8, where the tunnel starts. You just need to make sure the camera ends where the tunnel ends. So we'll start the camera at -8, bring up our timeline. I'm going to make this a 5-second animation, so let's set the frame to 120. We will add a keyframe at -8 on the first frame. So add a keyframe on the y-axis, go to 121, and let's set the location on the Y to 8 and add a keyframe. And now when you hit play, you'll notice it sort of accelerates and decelerates as it comes to an end and starts. Now we're going to need to change this to make sure that the loop looks better. So just come to your timeline here, hover your mouse over it, hit A, T, and change that to linear. And now you'll see there's no acceleration or deceleration when you do this. Great, so now that we've made our tunnel, we just need to make those light beams that sort of bouncing and refracting off the sides of the tunnel. It's a really cool effect that you can create using the Boolean modifier and just a few cylinders. So we're going to do this now. So just follow these steps and you should be able to get something similar. So first thing I want you to do is just hide the tunnel for now, just so we can start modeling one of the light rays. So we're going to hit Shift A and we'll add a mesh and we'll add a cylinder. And just come back to this menu here. We want to set this to 64, just give it a bit of fidelity. And we're going to hit SZ8, make it nice and tall. So you can hit S and then Shift Z, and that's going to allow you to lock onto the scaling on any axis other than the Z axis, so basically the X and the Y. So we'll bring that in and make it really thin, say about here. And now let's just scale this down a bit because it is a bit too long. So let's put it about here. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is name this light beam, just so we know what this object is. And let's bring our tunnel back, so unhide that. So we've got our light beam here. I'm just going to quickly tell you what I'm going to be doing with this object so I can speed up the video, as it's quite a long and finicky process. So I'll just quickly tell you what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be basically making duplicates of this light beam, placing the object around the tunnel so it looks like one beam is sort of bouncing off the edges, whereas it is actually multiple objects just sort of intersecting through the tunnel in different angles. But it's going to look like it's sort of guiding down the y-axis. So first thing I'm going to do is just show you a couple of them. So I'm going to hit G and Y. I'm just going to bring this in a bit to about here. I'm going to rotate it just like that. And what you want to do is just make a few of these. GZ, bring it down a bit. You just want to make sure there's no clipping of the beam through your camera. You don't want it to look like your camera is sort of going through the beam. And also that's quite a tight angle there as well. I want the beam to sort of guide along the y-axis a bit more. So I'm going to hit RZ and just move that around a bit. And I'm also looking for where the object sort of intersects into the tunnel. So ideally I want it to sort of be sort of near the edges of the tunnel. So I'm going to hit GX, just bring that there a bit, GY. See, it's a bit finicky, so this will take some time to get right. Just keep playing around with it, just till you get it looking good really. I'm going to scale this in a bit as well. So I'm just going to come to the transform settings here, just bring these in a little bit. Just make sure these values are the same. You want them to be relatively thin when you're doing this. Great, so I think that's one of them done. I'm just going to go to my camera settings. I'm just going to widen up the focal length a bit. I think we'll set it to about 24mm. I think that looks good. Yeah, I think that's looking good, that one. So what we're going to do now, we're going to duplicate it, hit Shift D, enter, and let's just move this one up a bit. We'll hit GY, push that one a bit forward, and let's rotate it so it's sort of going up. GZ. And you can kind of see where I'm getting at now. So we'll just do another one now. Shift D. Let's get this one sort of look like it's reflecting off this face and bouncing down. Yeah, unfortunately there is no simple formula to this. You just need to keep experimenting until you find something that you like. I'm going to get this to bounce sort of down. You might find you need to set origin to geometry sometimes. I don't know why the origin point just moved then, but that was throwing me off. Alright, so that's nearly there. This is how I did it when I made this render, but as I've been going through that, it's been taking a really long time to get these beams to angle up properly. I think there is an easier way, though I haven't actually tried it out yet, but I think you can use curve paths, and then I think you can add a skin modifier maybe, and then that will sort of solidify up the beams, and then you can convert it into mesh. I think that might be an easier way, but I haven't actually tried that yet. But yeah, we're pretty much there. We just need the last one to bounce in this direction and meet with this first one. So in order to get this right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an instance of these 4 objects. I'm going to hit M, new collection, and we'll call it tunnel. Hit OK. Now I'm going to hit Shift A, add a collection instance, and add a tunnel. And I'm going to hit GY16. That's going to create sort of a duplication of all these objects, which aligns perfectly at the end of this tunnel. So I'm going to use this instance here to match up my final object to that light beam there. So I'm going to hit Shift D on this light beam, Shift D, Y, I'm going to bring it up, and yeah, I'm just going to speed up this process again because it might take a while. Right, so once that's done, you should get something a little bit like this. You'll see you're sort of going through a tunnel with all these sort of beams running through it on the y-axis. But as you may have noticed in my render, the beams sort of grew as the camera went through the tunnel. Now I want to show you an interesting technique you can use using the Boolean modifier to create that effect. So first things first, let's hide our tunnel. So in order to achieve that effect, you're going to need an object. So we're going to hit Shift A, we're going to add a mesh, and we'll add a UV sphere. Now we're going to go to our light beam, and we're going to go to the modifier settings, and we're going to add a modifier, and we're going to add a Boolean modifier. On this object here, I want you to select the sphere. That's going to cause the mesh of this beam to join onto the mesh of this sphere. So when you pass the mesh over the sphere, it's going to hide all of the mesh data of that beam that sort of intersects within the sphere. So in order to create that growth effect, what you need to do is just sort of hide the sphere from the viewport. Now we're going to come to the transform settings here on your sphere. So you're going to come down to viewport display, and we're going to change this display as, we're going to change that to display as bounds. We'll check bounds as well, and now click on your sphere, and now you'll see when you hit G, Y, now you can kind of see what that's doing. When this bounding box is going over the beam, it's sort of hiding the mesh, as you can see. Now we just need to apply that modifier to all of these beams now. So we've got this modifier here. Let's quickly add this modifier to all of these beams. Select your first beam, hold Shift, and select all the beams. We're going to hit Control L, link modifiers, and that should do the trick now. So now, as we pass this sphere over, let's bring it to the start. As we pass the sphere over, it sort of grows these beams, but as you can see, they sort of come back when the bounding box leaves. So we want to just scale this sphere along the Y, so it's really long, say about there. Let's bring our tunnel back, and now bring the sphere back on the Y, and now as you move the sphere along the Y, it sort of grows these beams. And you can parent this to the camera as well, so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to click on the sphere, hold Control, click on your camera, hit Control P, Object, Keep Transform, and now the sphere is going to follow your camera. So hit play, and as your camera guides through, the beams are going to sort of grow with the camera. I think it's a really cool effect, but we need to make some adjustments to make sure it's all in view. So we're going to click on our sphere, we're going to hit G, Y, let's bring that to about, say about there, hit play, and that looks pretty cool. And I'm just going to scale this sphere up a bit as well, and again G, Y, just until you can find it again, find a good spot. Cool. Let's bring our tunnel back. Now let's just let's make a few more duplicates of this instance here to make the tunnel actually loop perfectly. So click on your tunnel instance here, go into top view. We're going to hit Shift D, Y16. Now hit Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. That repeats the function that you just did, and we'll do that until we get about 10 of these tunnels. So now hit 0, go into camera mode. Great, so that's looking cool. But as you'll play the animation, you'll notice the beams, you can kind of see them in all of the instances ahead. So the reason that is because we've instanced the beams as well. Now I only put them in there as a reference point when I was trying to get the positions of them correct. So I'm just going to take these beams, I'm just going to move them out of this collection. It's a bit messy in here actually. So first of all, I'm going to take all of these instances and I'm going to hit M, going to add a new collection, instances. Right, back to the beams. So I'm going to grab these beams, I'm just going to move them into our normal collection, and now you'll see that's fixed that problem. And now we've got another problem, and that's because this first beam is not growing, it's just sort of appearing at the end of the loop, and that's because we just need to duplicate these beams along one instance of the tunnel. So I'm just going to hit M, add a new collection, I'm going to call these light beams. And I'm just going to hide the tunnel quickly again and all of these instances. Let's put our overlays back on and let's go into top view. So we've got these beams here. Let's select the first one, hit Shift D, hit enter, and we'll hit G, Y, 16. Now hit 0, and I think that should fix the problem. So let's put our tunnels back on now and let's have a look at that. Great, that's worked. And just have a look through the animation for any glitches you see. As you can see, there's a little glitch here. You can see that beam just falls out of the bounding box of the Boolean. In order to fix that, go onto our sphere and let's just up the scale a bit. So S, just a touch, up that scale, hit play. And that's fixed that. And remember, if you want your beams to sort of appear longer in the camera view, you can always move the Boolean sphere forward a bit on the y-axis. Just these subtle adjustments will affect the length of your beams. Great, so we've done a lot of work there, so just make sure you save it because Blender has a tendency to crash sometimes. So just make sure you've got everything saved so we don't have to do anything all over again. And we're going to jump into render mode now and start shading this scene. So hit Z and then 8. Come to your world settings. Let's make the color black. First things first, we're going to go to our light beams. We'll go to the first beam. Come to the material properties here. We're going to add a new material and we're going to make this an emission shader. And let's pump the strength up to about 20. And you can pick any color you like. I'm going to go with a nice sort of red. And that looks cool. And now let's apply this material to all of these beams. So we're going to click on the light beam, hold shift, click on all of your beams, come into your viewport, hit Control L. That's going to give you linking options and we're going to link materials. Great, now let's light up the tunnel. So we're going to add a light, hit Shift A, add a light or add a point light. Let's make this a nice sort of cool blue to sort of offset against the red beam. Now let's pump up the wattage to about, think about there, yeah that's good, 48 looks good. Put the radius at about 0.8. We'll just leave specular as it is. Now let's bring our scene to life a bit. So we're going to go to our scene settings. We're going to add ambient occlusion. Going to add bloom. Just drop the bloom a bit. I think Evee bloom is quite strong. Forgot to mention we're going to be using Evee for this. And let's add screen space reflections. And on the color management, we'll set that to high contrast, I think. Now let's go back to our tunnel. This one here. Let's do some shading on this. We'll add a new material on the tunnel. We'll make it fully metallic. Keep the roughness sort of mid. You can drop the color down to more black if you want to tame these reflections a bit. I'm going to move this point light into my collection of tunnels. So just pop that there and there you go. It's going to light up the whole tunnel now. Right, so that's done. Let's add a few more final touches to this tunnel. We're going to just split this screen up. So just bring that in. Change this editor type to shader editor. This is basically all the same as what you see here. It's just going to let us go into a little bit more depth. So we're going to get rid of that. Let's just zoom in here. We're going to hit Shift A and we're going to add bump node. So go to vector, bump. We're going to plug the normal of that bump node into the normal of the principal BSDF. Hit Shift A, add texture, add a Voronoi texture. We're going to plug the color into the height and that's going to give you these sort of cool little patterns. You can use those ones if you like. I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to change it to Manhattan. I like the Manhattan pattern. I'm going to pump the scale up to about, say about 14, I reckon. And let's drop the randomness to, say about there. I think that looks good. Cool. It's running a bit slowly because there's a lot of calculations going on. Plus I'm running on a laptop as well, so that doesn't help. But yeah, when you render it out, it will look really cool. If you think the tunnel's a bit dark, you can always come to the material properties and you can bring this up a bit if you like. Great, we're pretty much there. You can render it out there if you like, but I'm just going to add one final touch using the compositor. So if you want to skip this step, feel free to do that, but I'll show you anyway. So I'm just going to render out one frame. So just pick any frame. I'm going to hit this one, hit F12, just render out one image. As you can see, we've still got that sphere in there, so that's why it's looking like that. Just click on the sphere, go to here, go to the filters, add globally display in all viewports and disable in renders. Let's just uncheck these. And now when you render it out, let's just render out one image. There you go, we've got success. Great. So with that image rendered, let's jump into the compositor. We're going to select use nodes, just bring that over there, drag that here. We're going to hit Shift A, output node, we'll add a viewer node, pop that there, plug the image into the image, and I'm going to hold Shift, right click, and just join them together. Now I'm just going to hit Shift A, add a distortion, I'm going to add lens distortion, I'm going to pop that there. This is just going to give a bit more depth to the render. I'm going to set the lens distortion to about 0.5. So because this node distorts the lens, it's going to sort of create this interesting curvature on the beams as the camera passes through. I think it looks quite cool. But like I said, you can skip this option if you want, not essential. So yeah, let's render out the animation now. So just make sure when you do this composite in that you have your lens distortion also plugged into the composite node, or this isn't going to actually work. So go to your output properties, change the output to somewhere you can find it. Change this to FFmpeg video, encoding, MP4, output quality, perceptually lossless. Save that, come to render, hit render animation, and you're done. Right, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Really helps me grow the channel. I was really excited to share this technique with you. I think you can create some really interesting effects with it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with this. So feel free to tag me in your renders if you did make it to the end. That's at NebMotion. I'll be leaving a link to the project file in the description, or you can also find that from my website. That's nebmotion.co.uk.